Many of you have probably not heard about the case involving an individual here in Columbus, Georgia, who spent 31 years incarcerated for a crime that the Georgia Innocence Project took on and found some discrepancies in the nature of what was alleged and had this person incarcerated. I was standing inside of a business establishment taking care of some of my everyday activities, and I was approached by a gentleman who looked very familiar to me. It appeared to be the person from the story that you're about to hear about. It was Paul Tyner. He had found his way over where I was because I had written the press a few weeks ago about what I knew about him on behalf of what I had discovered. When I returned back to Columbus, Georgia in 2007, it was alleged that no one knew where Paul was initially. I recall as a boy knowing Paul and interacting with Paul, and he just disappeared. And for years I asked what happened to him, and eventually people started to leak out information that he had been involved in some trouble. And the kinds of things that they were saying about him were pretty awful. And in this part of the country, in this particular community, when people start spreading bad rumors, everybody tends to believe it, even if it's false. And nobody really knew what to believe. Well, it turns out the Georgia Innocence Project found some discrepancies in what was alleged to have been the cause of Paul being incarcerated for all that time. And Paul had been fighting the whole time for all those decades for an opportunity to be heard, and he had been, according to his testimony, denied that opportunity. He also said that the evidence that was being held against him when he went to request it, he was informed and notified that it had been destroyed. And each time that he would come before the governing body for parole or whatever the options were for some type of relief, that the Judge Pullen, would go before them and tell them that he was requesting that Paul remain incarcerated and that he never sees the light of day again. Well, as I stood inside of this place, looking at this man who had been through all that, listening to him in his own words, and trying to figure out how something like that can happen, it left me very puzzled. In this part of the country, take my word for it, if they know for sure you have done something you should not have done, you are not going to be released. You are not going to obtain your freedom again. Apparently, the judge was lenient and granted a bond of some kind that was what gave him his opportunity to obtain his freedom until they determine whatever's going to happen next. The case involved Judge Rumer, who I've seen dealing with several cases around here and also interacting with numerous other people in politics and the legal world, including the mayor of Columbus. All these cases were pending around the same time that involved Paul Tyner, Carlton Gary, Wayne Williams, Michael Curry, and several others that will come along the way. The one involving Paul was very, very abnormal from the start. And knowing what I know about this particular area and how black men and boys were treated and how they were accused on a regular basis, it did not surprise me once I found out some of the details. But the things that became more complex were how these stories were coming back into the current population. Who was bringing this information forward when the cases were put on the docket and things like that? It seemed like it was somewhere in between justice and also popular culture and selling trends. They said that, through rumor at least, they said that Paul had engaged in some very, very awful things that involved threat and danger to women. And anytime you allege that somebody is aggressive with women in that nature, It's something that can be used to polarize a community and increase a threat level, cause a lot of profiling, and cause a lot of fear. And they have always used that fear and hysteria as the driving force behind what happens in this market. But the question, more importantly, was why they ran that story at the time they ran it and who was covering the story. The way the story was run locally was not in a manner where it was really taken serious as the details alleged would seem it would have been. It seemed like it would have garnered a lot more attention than it actually did. The person that was covering the story was a reporter from this market who I have learned is a person with a background that involved journalism before she came here. They said her name is Georgia Elise. Georgia Elise appears to be a very attractive biracial woman. She's something that's unusual for this type of market. They don't really have anybody like her here. And I wanted to know why she specifically was given that case. Was she assigned to it? Did somebody give her information? What was it that made the connection between her and that case? Being from this particular area and knowing what kinds of journalists they bring here and what they bring, the journalists they bring here for, I knew there had to be something more to it than just telling another story. And just the way that they ran it and the places that they streamed it and shared it to gave me reason to believe there had to be something underneath this. Well, why her? This person is of the profile that around this part of the country could drive a lot of these guys crazy. She has that profile that could end up making some guy look like he stalked her or became obsessed with her. She looks exotic. She looks like a white woman in the face with black dominant features. She's in popular culture. She seems like something that these guys in this part of the country go crazy for. In the North, they have a lot of attractive women that are mixed race people. They have a lot of attractive women of all races. But down here, somebody like her is a rare breed. And when they put her on a case involving something that was dealing with things like violence and rape and sex and pimping and all of this kind of stuff, it was very, very unusual. And I asked myself, I said, is this a woman looking to tell a story that needs to be told to give credence to somebody who has been served an injustice? Or is this some type of a situation where there is some kind of dual exploitation where it's newsworthy and it's also something that can be expounded upon? A lot of people find their way into stardom and celebrity by the stories that they're associated with in journalism. So, for example, you can have the reporter giving their testimony about what it was like to interview or interact with somebody that was part of some story that becomes something that goes viral and becomes sellable. Columbus was a place in transition during this time. They had a local theater chain here with a headquarters called Carmike Cinemas. Carmike Cinemas has thousands of screens around the country where they sell basically opportunities to people to be able to go see movies. And so the assets of this particular small community were the investments people made in the lives and the stories of the people who live here and who come from here. And there's so much tragedy centered around sex and violence, it made you have to ask questions. Another thing that made me ask questions is that right around the time that story was running, I was riding on my regular route and I was coming down Hilton Avenue, and I observed a mixed race person who looked like it could have been no one else except Georgia Elise videotaping me. And I can recall very vividly thinking to myself, why is this person videotaping me? And I'll never forget it because the vehicle that she was in was obstructing the roadway, so that I had to make a little bit of a detour to be able to continue down the route. And I observed her turn the camera around and continue to videotape me. And I thought, why is this person videotaping me? There's nothing going on Hilton Avenue, and there's really nothing worthy of B-roll up here, but she has that camera centered on me. What is she doing? And I thought to myself when I saw her running the story on Paul, is this person playing games with the medium for some other motivation, or is this something that she's doing for work? I had no idea who she was. I had never seen her, and I certainly hadn't known anything about her any more than what I learned from the story that she did on Paul Tyner's life. It turns out she has a background in radio here, and she also has some background in radio journalism and some other places, so she has a following already. She's been involved in certain industry practices already. And so I wanted to find out, who is this person that came to Columbus, Georgia, that's telling a story like this, that looks like her, and that who I also know was probably the person that was videotaping me around the time when that story was running. They will put you in the middle of a scandal in Columbus, Georgia in a heartbeat. And I thought, okay, is this somebody that's from here that I've just never seen yet? Or is this another person that's from another place that's coming and going? Because they bring a lot of journalists in development here. They bring the ones that are kind of on the border of being really good and still having a lot to learn. And so you can expect that they're going to come in and do what they think they have been asked to do to fit into this conform here, so they can create what will give the status quo here the depictions they want to depict for what they want to sell in terms of news, fear, alarm, or what have you. When I sat and talked to Paul a little bit, a lot of things were going through my mind, because I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, is this another Stephen Avery type of situation where they release this man and this photographer that looks like Georgia Elise, this reporter that looks like Georgia Elise, is associated with something where it becomes a scandal to make this man look like he did something to her, or that he pursued her in some sexual way or something. Like, all of that stuff crossed my mind, because he returned back to the city where he was at, where he knows people, where his family is. And something about all of it seemed unusual. And so as fate would have it, we would find out that Paul is the brother of super producer Dallas Austin. He's an icon in the music industry, and he's Paul's direct brother, which made the connection between why Georgia Elise would be associated with something like that and be interested, because her background is in music. And when I think about what people can take journalism and do with it now, it can be something where somebody can be both helping you and exploiting you at the same time. And I don't know enough about her to know what her motivations would be, but I know that everything that I saw and what it added up to, and based upon what I know about the city I come from, was nothing that seemed like it was good entirely, I should say. And so my next question was, okay, who is this woman? Is she here to be some type of entrapment? Is she here to entice somebody? Is she here to be some type of Jessica Rabbit from Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Like, who is this person, and why has all of this transpired in the way that it has? Because for her to be in the news circle here, part of that genre, all of them tend to be together for certain causes and certain issues, and so much scandal is happening right now in the journalism industry, particularly when it comes to things that involve sex scandal and things that are gender driven. It's a very, very trying time to be trustworthy of certain aspects of journalism, and I wanted to know what this person's motivations were and why she was assigned to that case. And I don't want to disparage her. I don't know her. I don't know anything about her. But I also don't want her contributing in any trouble here and exploiting the fact that she looks pretty good to do so. I mean, she looked pretty good for this market. Looks like somebody you would want to get together and have some babies with or something. And she's somebody that could inspire a lot of attention from the local people who aren't used to seeing anybody who looks like that here. And I hope that the integrity for which she uses journalism is in line with what the purpose and intent of journalism actually is, and that she's not using it to exploit in the ways a lot of journalists do for self-promotion of an agenda to be involved with scandalous publishing, news, investigative reports that they sell to the cable news network, movies, and other types of things that are used to trivialize cultural issues to make themselves become popular for having had contact with certain people. I think it's outstanding that she gave a voice to people that would not otherwise have had a voice to be able to help Paul find his freedom. And we want to give her full credit for that. But I hope that she has not been misled into exploiting people in this community like some journalists who have been here in the past have. And so I decided to do a little research on her too, because she's here now and she's altering the course of the history in the place where I was born and raised. And I found a mugshot with her name on it, and I'm not saying it's her or not her, but it looks exactly like her. And so we don't really know where these people come from, what they're doing, what their own issues are, or anything else. We're just taking their word for it. And I hope that she has not come here with the intention to hurt people, because people who are pretty good looking cause some unique problems in a lot of different settings. And everybody's not interested in being enticed and entrapped and all of that kind of stuff, playing those games that a lot of journalists play, particularly the ones that use their looks, their image, to make their moves and make their connections. And so I hope that Paul's path to whatever means justice will be clarified for all of us, and that he does not get put into some type of Stephen Avery situation where they do something to somebody and make it seem like, oh, see, we told you who he was, just so they can sell a scandal through Columbus, Georgia, to offset all of these involuntary investments in people's lives. They didn't tell everybody that Paul had written a book about his life and his circumstances, and that he was trying to pursue justice for all this time. They had him buried in the Department of Corrections with hope that he would never have an opportunity to make the facts known. And we just want to make sure that if the story has to be told, that we tell it based upon the actual facts from the actual people that were involved, and not this hearsay and speculation and this gossip that this part of the country and this town has been for decades invested in to keep people polarized in hysteria and afraid.